He's a trooper, always. Always a good guy and in the crosshairs when it comes to things like this. John Fanta from Fox, CBS.
Where is it, John Fanta?
He's
Kevin?
now doing NBA games for Peacock and NBC. He's so good covering the sport of college basketball, and now he's involved in covering and calling NBA games. John Fanta will join us at 11 a.m. Ben will be with us at 12. Ben did a survey of players about a few things, including who's the best athlete on the team. I tried to play the game in my mind before I saw what the result was in Ben's survey, and I did not get it right. But we'll talk to Ben about that at 12. This from Randy to open up the show. Randy writes, Kevin, I'm disappointed in your very lax reaction to JD5 bending the knee to Eagles Nation. There was a time when the Kevin Sheehan I knew would show some rivalry backbone and teach young Jaden the do's and don'ts of the NFC East. I'll answer that in a moment. And then I got this from Jaden, not Jaden Daniels. Was upset that you seem to think that anybody that had a problem with what Jaden said was wrong. This goes against your everybody's entitled mantra. Yeah, I don't think I ever said, Jaden, not the Jaden Daniels. I don't think I ever said, Jaden, that I don't have a problem with people who had a problem with what Jaden said. In fact, I think I said the opposite of that. I said, I totally can understand to a certain point, the people that are still into these rivalries to the level where you don't want to hear your, star player praising any rival. I don't have a problem with that. So you heard it incorrectly, Jaden. It's not the way I feel. I didn't have a problem, basically, with what Jaden said. And by the way, I think our poll, we put out our Waldorf Honda Twitter poll, X poll of the day. Did you have a problem with it, yes or no? And for the most part, overwhelmingly, nobody had a problem with it. It was really kind of, I think, something where, yes, part of it is that we have a large contingent of us that are big Jaden Daniels fans, and we're giving him massive benefit of the doubt in almost everything he does and says. True. But I think this was, in context, really a nothing burger. I mean, I said this yesterday, but I'll say it again. I don't think, the question was something that he was prepared for. It was yes or no. The Eagles fans are the worst in sports. And he was animated, and you heard his tone in his answer, and he answered it honestly. And by the way, truthfully, to where I think most people who follow the NFL would agree with him. Philadelphia's environment in the games he played in 2024, Thursday Night Football and the NFC Championship game, he got two really good road experiences in Philadelphia. And even though, FedEx Northwest Field was different in 2024 than it had been in previous years, it still isn't the atmosphere that he played in college, that Seattle has, that Philly has, that Green Bay has. It's still too many, opponents' fans. And you get that in a lot of stadiums. I understand that. And he felt it, being in Philadelphia those two games that year. Those were the two best road environments he played in that particular season. And it felt to him like the closest thing to Death Valley, I'm assuming, where, you could certainly make the case that's number one. I mean, he didn't really have another road environment that was that difficult. Cincinnati on a Monday night, okay. In week 3, probably a decent, atmosphere, but it wasn't like Cincinnati, remember, in the moment, was fearing Washington coming in. Washington had lost to Tampa and kicked 7 field goals to beat the Giants in week 2. Those were the 2 games he played in Philadelphia. They were and felt like, for the first time in a long time, true rivalry games, and they were massively important games, including one of the final 3 football games of the season. And I thought, especially after I listened to it and understood the context, it was the competitor in him coming out saying, man, there's nothing better than being the road starting quarterback going into an environment and an atmosphere like that. So it's the way I feel. I think the thing we talked about yesterday, too, and a couple of callers pointed out, it just stinks that the first venue, the first environment that doesn't pop into anybody's mind when it comes to, wow, they're fans, is Washington, because there was a time when that was one of the first 2 or 3 answers. I'm not talking about from our own players, but players around the league. And I'm not just talking about RFK. FedEx was good and has been good. 2005 was great. That Cowboys game in 2005, when they were surging towards the playoffs and needed to win all those games, that was the crowd. Stadium opened in 97. That was the best crowd in those first 8-9 years of FedEx. True rival in town, big game, Parcells, Gibbs, Washington surging, needing a win. They blew out the Cowboys. The place was nuts, as much as FedEx could be. 2012, I mean, pretty much all season long, we experienced it. It just has been few and far between since then. So around the league, other players aren't going to say, hey, man, how about that Washington fan base? Yeah, what about it is going to be the answer. Hopefully it'll change. Looking forward to it changing at some point. So I didn't ask you this before the show, Max, because literally somebody sent this to me just right before the show. And you tell me if you've seen this, but is Brandon Ayuk saying that he'd like to play in Washington?
I haven't seen anything on that, but I can certainly look right now, see if I've missed anything. But I haven't seen any like specific comments from Ayuk being like, yes, I would like to come to Washington.
Yeah. I mean, am I going to be surprised if Brandon Ayuk's out there saying, hey, I want to play in Washington. That's where I'd like to play. Brandon Ayuk has a lot of issues right now. Brandon Ayuk lost a lot of money with his lack of professionalism. At least that's the way it would seem from afar. I personally was, from just a fan standpoint of him, because I was a big fan of him after 2023. And I was absolutely in favor of the idea of, if he doesn't get a deal done with San Francisco, I mean, tell me exactly what the price is going to be, but he's an elite wide receiver. He was at the end of 2023 right there in kind of the conversation of the top 10. And his contract that he eventually got from San Francisco kind of reflected that, as much as, you buy into contracts reflect where they rank. It doesn't always work that way. But I was a big Brandon Ayuk fan. I think he's a phenomenal route runner. I think he's a deep threat. I think he is a game plan for wide receiver. I have no idea what he's going to be now after the injury last year. And his behavior over that summer, and then now the very odd behavior, unless there's a really good explanation for it, is just strange. Why would you your judgment in essentially putting all of that guaranteed money at risk because it wasn't guaranteed because you went AWOL? You essentially violated the contract, and with certain cause elements to it. That's poor judgment. I mean, all the dude's got to do is basically post and let the doctors look at him a few times as he's going through rehab. But clearly something happened there, and he handled it poorly, it would appear from the outside, and the breakup is imminent between him and the 49ers. And look, the deal is that nobody's taking on his current salary. So the 49ers are not going to be able to trade him. Brandon Ayuk's not getting traded. Nobody in their right mind is going to take on $27, $28 million in salary next year for a guy who's coming off a serious injury and went AWOL on his team. So more likely than not, he'll be a post-June 1 release, or it'll be a designated post-June 1 release, so that they can split up whatever dead cap money they have by moving on from him over 2 years rather than have it all hit in 1 year. That would seem to make the most sense from the 49ers standpoint. And then Once he's released, then it's a matter of him going out there and finding out what his marketplace is. And it's going to be a 1 year, heavily incentivized deal. I'm not going to say there's not going to be guaranteed money for 1 year. Somebody's going to give him some decent guaranteed money for the first year, and then there will be heavy incentives, and you'll take a 1 year flyer on him. And then if it works out, you'll try to sign him, or you'll have the option of franchise tagging him at the end of next year. I personally think the judgment, and when somebody is that unprofessional, based on what we know, but it was enough to get John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan in their, post loss to the Seahawks in the playoffs press conference, sort of the wrap to the 2025-2026 season. The tone and the just mystifying circumstances around this from their standpoint, the fact that they don't want to have anything to do with him because he was unreachable, because he was just completely unprofessional, and they don't have any idea as to why. Maybe there is a reason why, and they're covering it up. That's possible. Maybe he needs a new start. Maybe, teaming up with his former college quarterback would be, a jump start to the second part of his career. And again, you're not going to have to take that much of a risk. You're not going to have to trade draft picks for him. I don't think you are, unless somehow the 49ers got more than one team into sort of a a mini bidding war where you could extract a pick out of the teams. But once you trade for him, you're locked into $27 million next year. I just don't see that contract that he has in terms of next year's salary, base salary. I don't see that being a trade. I mean, that is, if somebody decided to take that on, it would almost be like you'd have to take some picks back with it. The 49ers would have to give you picks, but why are they going to do that? So we'll see what happens, but, he's not playing in San Francisco, and he will be on a roster because he's just too talented not to be. Do you want him? Brandon Ayuk, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. He apparently would like to reunite with Jaden Daniels. We know what Jaden said to Pro Football Talk at the Super Bowl. There's a certain wide receiver that I played with at Arizona State, or that played at Arizona State. Personally, I don't know if that really means Jaden wants it, or it's just the public face of what he wants his good friend to think he wants. Because sometimes that's the deal. Good friend publicly will say, oh, man, I'd love to play with him. I'd love to play with a certain guy that I played with in college that went to Arizona State. But maybe he knows as much as anybody knows the dude's nuts, and he wouldn't be a good teammate. He wouldn't be good for the organization. I don't know. Do you want him? Essentially for a 1 year deal, some guaranteed money, but highly incentivized. 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the team980.com.
Building offense together, maybe adding new pieces. You guys added Josh Connolly last year, Laramie at the tackle spots. Pretty exciting stuff. You had Bill at running back, just one name. You get Jane Daniels, but he just gets Bill. Apparently. Is there something is there one little thing that you might want to add on, like a player type, maybe a little message to your bosses, this is what I like to throw to? We talked last year at Arizona State and at LSU. You had a bunch of cool receivers, but is there one type that you maybe want to add on?
There's a couple of individuals that are out there. Maybe somebody from Arizona State in my past.
Okay. Lives on the West Coast.
Yeah, there's people like that out there. I don't want to get too much, but when that time comes and hopefully we can sign those type of players.
Okay. No, thank you for saying that.
Jaden Daniels, that was with Yahoo Sports, not Pro Football Talk. Yahoo's Nate Tice during Super Bowl week. What several of you tweeted, sent me via X, was a link to a Bill Barnwell comment from ESPN. Bill Barnwell saying the obvious landing spot for Brandon Ayuk is Washington. He also wrote this about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, about cut candidates in the NFL. And the first cut candidate he mentions is Brandon Ayuk. And Barnwell writes, if you know what's happening here, you might be the only one. Yeah, this is a big, how did this happen? How did it get to the point where he decided to essentially go AWOL? Is it something we don't know about? Is it just him? The organization seems to think it's him, and they're ready to move on from him. But Barnwell writes, if you know what's happening here, you might be the only one. The entire Ayuk situation with the 49ers has been weird, dating back to the summer of 2024 when the organization was reportedly close to trading its star receiver to the Steelers. At the last moment, though, the 49ers and Ayuk agreed to a 4-year, $120 million contract extension, seemingly ensuring Ayuk's future would be in San Francisco for years to come. Since then, Ayuk has caught 25 passes for 374 yards, and he tore his right ACL and meniscus in October of 2024, ending his season. By the way, he did not play at all last year, even though there was belief during last offseason and even towards the end of the summer before the communication with him broke down that he could be available to them in the second half or maybe the final quarter of the 2025 season. They certainly could have used him. The team reportedly wanted to trade Ayuk after the 2024 season, the season in which he got hurt in, suggesting that it had buyer's remorse on the deal, but no move ever transpired. The expectation was that Ayuk would return in 2025, as I just mentioned, but that never happened. The wide receiver reportedly missing rehab sessions. As a result, the 49ers elected to void the $24.9 million bonus that was previously guaranteed in Ayuk's contract. That decision would typically trigger a grievance from the player and the NFLPA, but Ayuk has apparently decided against filing a grievance. The NFLPA, I'm sure, said, you were going through whatever you were going through. We can file a grievance. We can fight this. We can, maybe settle on a number. Obviously, he doesn't want another dime from them. He doesn't want any of the $24.9 million bonus that was guaranteed. And then Barnwell writes, you don't have to have a master's degree in reading tea leaves to gain a sense of where this one is heading. And in case it still wasn't clear, John Lynch said it's safe to say that he's played his last snap with the Niners. That was a few weeks ago. Does Ayuk have any trade value? Barnwell writes. The 49ers were in position to land a second-round pick for him in 2024 and wanted to get something in return for him last offseason, but it would be surprising if they were able to get anything more than a conditional pick for Ayuk now. Even if Ayuk's 2026 compensation isn't guaranteed, I'm not sure there will be many teams lining up to pay him the $27 million, this was what I was referring to, that's currently due on his existing contract. See, if he gets traded, that contract gets traded. If he gets released, that contract, is anything that's guaranteed is paid out by the 49ers. It hits their dead cap. That isn't for the team that picks him up, after he's been released. That's why it just doesn't make any sense to me that a team is going to, give up a pick and then take on the $27 million in guarantees. And it sounds like Barnwell feels the same. He writes, Ayuk might be released or need to renegotiate that deal before landing somewhere else. That's if he got traded, if he, either released or negotiate that deal as part of a trade. So I guess, if there's more than one team interested and the 49ers could get, a conditional day 3 pick, but it would probably be contingent on the team that's trading the conditional day 3 pick to renegotiate that $27 million to something much less than that that's due on his deal. And then Barnwell writes, one obvious landing spot is Washington, where the Commanders employ former 49ers executive Adam Peters and have an opening in their lineup at wide receiver with Deebo Samuel hitting free agency. By the way, Ayuk and Deebo are completely different players. I think most of you know that. Deebo's more of a weapon. Deebo lines up in the backfield. Deebo's in motion. Deebo is all over the place. Ayuk is a true X, just so you know. So is Terry, but they certainly would be a great 1-2 tandem if Ayuk's healthy and if he's sane. The last thing that Barnwell writes, Ayuk was Jaden Daniels' teammate at Arizona State, but even for a team with a quarterback on a rookie deal, $27 million would be a big ask for a player who hasn't played since the middle of 2024. And that's the deal. Like, the question here is, would you want Brandon Ayuk? But it's going to be off of waivers. You're going to be signing him. He's going to be, cut more likely than not. Maybe you give up a conditional day 3 pick and you restructure that deal and pay him, a lot less than that with heavy incentives. This is a risk player right now because forget about the craziness off the field. This is a guy coming off a very serious injury. I loved the player. I'm not going to lie to you. I loved the player, and the idea of getting that player, the Brandon Ayuk of 2023, in this offense with Terry, with maybe even another weapon, with the offensive line, the way it came on last year. Yeah. I mean, if you tell me I'm getting that guy, 100% yes. But I think you really have to tread lightly on this thing. You have to tread very lightly. The good news here is our team is the one kind of set up like they were with Deebo Samuel, and Deebo played well. 1-year deal, Deebo gave it all, his all. He just didn't have anybody around him and didn't get to play with the starting quarterback for the majority of the year. But Adam Peters, is going to know the player and is going to know the situation in San Francisco. And Jaden's going to have a pretty good idea of the player as well. So if they did it, part of my benefit of the doubt mode here for the first few years, I would trust it. I'd be excited about it. But if they didn't do it and you saw teams backing off and maybe somebody did it on a real low-risk deal, you'd know that the word out there was, this is bad news. But if they did it, I think I'd have some comfort in that they understand the person and they understand what happened. And as Barnwell wrote, if you know what happened in San Francisco, you might be the only one. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. So my answer is, yes, I want him, but only if they actually sign him, because that tells me that they know the whole story and they feel it's absolutely worth it. If he ended up going somewhere else, I wouldn't feel badly about it because I'd feel like people that were as close to in the know as anybody outside of San Francisco passed. Let's go to Mike in Upper Marlboro. Mike, Brandon Ayuk, yes or no?
Yes, because I think that just like you were saying, Peters and I'm sure the GM and San Fran talk on a regular. I'm sure they're close friends. They have conversations. So, but if I'm Peters, I would go to Daniel and say, look, this is your boy. This is on you. And I would also put his mom on him to watch him as well. The same way Dallas did with Des Bryant. Des Bryant had a guy with him 24/7 to keep him out of trouble. So I would have his mom.
Well, he's not getting into trouble. It's not like this guy's getting arrested or he's getting into trouble or there are allegations. He just went AWOL on his team.
Yeah,
you know,
but his mom can change his image. His mom can change his image as well. She can get
who's
him on
mom?
a turkey commercial.
Brandon Ayuk's mom?
No, Daniel's mom.
You want Jaden Daniels' mom to take over the PR for Brandon Ayuk?
Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
Yep, that's exactly. Yeah, because they all know each other, and Daniel's mom can take over Ayuk and have his kind of change his image, the way to kind of keep him under wraps, and she making, like say, get him a Chunky commercial, get everybody to know that he's not as flaky as we all thinking right now. So, I think he's a dog. Like Don Walker said, we got to have some dogs in here. Talent sometimes got to override the attitude.
In 2023, he was a flat out dog. He averaged 18 yards per reception, and again, it's the 49er scheme. It's the 49er run game, but this is what we're coming into. And him and Terry, if we're getting that Ayuk, sign me up 100%.
Yes,
if we're getting a weirdo who's not good in the locker room and there's a culture problem and, the first sign of any sort of turmoil, he's going to go AWOL. Well, you could say, the risk going in was minimal. And that's the thing with Ayuk. You're only doing this if you're going into it low risk. It's the only way to do it. Thanks, Mike, for the call. And let him make up that money in a Chunky commercial. By the way, Pro Football Focus at the end of 2023 had the wide receiver rankings per, their PFF grades, whatever it's worth to you. Tyreek Hill was the number one receiver per PFF in 2023. Brandon Ayuk was the number 2 receiver in the NFL after 2023. Then it was Nico Collins, Amon-Ra, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, Puka Nacua, AJ, DJ Brown, Keenan Allen, Deebo Samuel was 12, Jamar Chase, Rashee Rice, Tank Dell, Olave. Where was Terry on this list? He wasn't in the top 20 after 2023. 301-230-0980. Brandon Ayuk, yes or no? Eric in Naples. Eric, how are you?
Hey, Kevin, I'm great, man. Thanks for taking my call. Real quick, just big thank you for the Kirk Cousins interview. That was fantastic.
Oh yeah, he was great. Thanks.
And I think we're backed into a corner, like you're suggesting. You get all the adults in the room. Maybe that includes Jaden's mom, and you make sure that everybody's on the same page. But the talent is there, and I just think we're kind of desperate. One other thing, Ian brought up, the red flags with Jaden. I didn't catch if you had mentioned it yet, but there's this flag football thing that is kind of floating around out there. And
is that a red flag to you?
Well, I mean, he's sort of been, non-committal on whether he's going to, actually partake in it, and it's one of those things where if he were to get hurt over there doing something like that, I guess it's in Saudi Arabia, Tom Brady's behind it.
There are a lot of players playing in it, right? We talked about it when the release came out. But isn't like CeeDee Lamb and a bunch of other players playing in it? I forget. Tom Brady's like spearheading this thing, right?
Yeah. And I mean, maybe it's no big deal, but one other thing is and I don't know if you ever reported on it and I just missed it, but he left Arizona State, and I know the program was in trouble, but the player reaction to Jaden leaving always kind of made me raise an eyebrow, and I never got like a full explanation.
Hold on. Start over. The player reaction to Jaden leaving. What are you talking about again?
Well, when he left Arizona State to go to LSU.
Oh, Arizona State. Yes. Look, this isn't. I mean, So you share a lot of the concerns that Ian has. You think that there are some, reddish flag warnings on Jaden Daniels and what character and other things?
Well, no, I mean, I agree with you. He's been unbelievable, and everything you hear, showing up early, staying late. I mean, he's such a cerebral guy, and that's the other reason I would trust them to bring Brandon in, because I hate to use the term babysitter, but I think he would be Brandon Ayuk's babysitter to a degree.
I would hope. And look. You're entitled to your opinion. Thanks for the call, Eric. Ian's entitled to his opinion. And look, there are those things that I often pay attention to as well. And sometimes there is reason for me to kind of, pay attention further and feel like maybe this is a bit of, inmates running the asylum, which is kind of what we had when RG3 was here. I think the two people in particular appear from afar to be opposites, not to mention that Jaden Daniels is a much more advanced football player at the quarterback position than RG3 was and ever was after, many years of trying with different teams after he left Washington. But, yeah, I mean, that's not really what we're talking about here, but I know why you went to it, because some people would feel like if they ended up signing Brandon Ayuk, that would be like succumbing to Jaden Daniels' desire. And I'm with you. Jaden Daniels is not the general manager. I don't want our front office, walking on eggshells like, oh, my God, if we don't get him Brandon Ayuk, is he going to be upset? Are we going to risk not signing him when he becomes, available to sign? I don't think that's the relationship in the building at all. I'd be shocked if that's the relationship. And here's the thing, and it's a big difference from what we had. There's nobody there to entitle that, if it actually existed, which I don't think it exists. There's nobody there to further that, to allow that to become a big part of the organization's decision-making process like it was when Dan was there, and Dan's wanted to be best friends with a 23-year-old. We don't have that kind of ownership anymore. We've got adults. So I don't see that. I don't feel that at all. If they went and got Brandon Ayuk and they did it in a very low-risk environment, I would absolutely think it was a lot more of Adam Peters and the 49ers connections, and Peters knowing the player, Peters knowing the organization and what happened. And I'd feel okay about it. Whew. Man, I get it. PTSD, Snyder years, RG3 PTSD. I just don't feel that same way. Paulie, Brandon Ayuk, yes or no?
Hell to the W. Big guy.
That's a big guy.
Doing, man? Listen, man, this is a hell to the yes. What are we talking about, man? You bring him in for a physical. He's healthy. You sign him up. I mean, I don't understand where the question is at.
Well, the question is, would you or wouldn't you? It sounds like you would.
No. I'm saying I don't understand, like, where's the reservations in bringing him in. If he passes his physical, sign him up, man. I mean, this is what you just tell me. He was the second-rated receiver in 23.
Per PFF.
Right? And then what happened? Okay. All right.
He got hurt.
Y'all like to go by that, whatever. Okay. No. What happened? They waited and they waited and they waited to sign him. And it became personal. The same thing you said this year about Terry, something's not right. He might take this a little personal. Well, you did take it personal. And once he got into camp late, struggled early on, then he got hurt. These players know their contract. From then he was like, you know what, forget this. He didn't want it. He wanted to be in Washington before that. He wanted to trade to Washington before that. That's why he debunked that Steelers stuff. He didn't want to go to Pittsburgh. He wanted to come to Washington. That didn't work out. So he took a deal with the 49ers. Okay. He got hurt. And after that, it was personal for him.
There's one big difference, because if you're trying to compare it to the Terry situation, the one big difference is he actually got what he wanted. he got the contract. He was a younger player, and they gave him a massive contract extension.
Yeah, but the relationship
Terry didn't get what he wanted.
Fractured. Yeah, but the relationship was already fractured.
Well, maybe, but you might be right. But we get contract, negotiation, confrontation, and contention and hurt feelings every summer and every offseason. But ultimately, they come back together. The player got what he wanted, and all is well. He got hurt. He was.
All wasn't well. The relationship was fractured. So
well,
once he had a way out,
it sounds like you're the guy. You should call up Bill Barnwell. I'll give you his number, and you've got the answer as to specifically what happened in San Francisco. You're
trying to tell y'all all
you're guessing at this point. You're guessing based on how you felt about Terry.
No, I'm not basing on how I felt about Terry. I'm using facts from what I see. What I'm feeling is, my opinion is, the relationship was already fractured. So once he found his way out, that's what he used his leverage to get out.
Okay,
I'll get his money back because I'm gonna make it up anyway.
Okay, hold on, Paulie. Hold on for 1 second. Let's say you're right. And by the way, it's a possibility. I'm not discounting it as a possibility. The fact that you feel like you know it is where I would say I don't know how you would know it for sure. But let's just say you're right, that the relationship, based on the way the contract negotiations went before 2024, during the 2024 offseason, really fractured the relationship. Okay? Beyond that, how do you feel about a player going AWOL? How do you feel about a player essentially losing $25 million of guaranteed contract money because he couldn't show up at the facility once a week or whatever it was so that they could get a look at how his rehab was coming along? Is that good judgment? Does that worry you at all?
It doesn't worry me.
Okay.
Because that was his. He didn't want to be there from the beginning.
I don't care. He's under contract to be there. There's a certain level of professionalism.
He wanted a trade. He wanted a trade to Washington. He didn't get that trade to Washington. They dragged out his contract situation. You said it yourself. He was the number 2 rated receiver. So he was feeling himself like, why is this a problem with me getting my money? Oh, now you want to give me my money. And then as soon as he knows his contract, when he got hurt, that was his out. He wanted out. And that's what he got out of there. We're going to see the
and you're okay with the way he's getting out of there. You don't think it's a knock against character.
Listen. The way my current girlfriend broke up with her ex had nothing to do with me. You know what I'm saying?
It should have something. It may not have had anything to do with you, but it's something you should pay attention to.
Was Jaden Daniels the 49ers quarterback? No. Obviously, they got some type of bond because he was using Jaden for his negotiation ploy back in 23. So they're close.
Well, Washington wasn't the only team interested in trading for him in 2023, dude.
No, I understand that. I'm not saying that. Him and Jaden's close. Remember, he was on TikTok at our practice.
I know that.
But we will see this in 2 years.
He wasn't at our practice. Jaden shared a video of the practice with him.
Okay, whatever. You know what?
And he put it out on social media.
We will see this in 2 years with Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers, Brandon Ayuk, and Jaden Daniels are thick as thieves.
Right.
For whatever reason it is, these 2 receivers love Jaden Daniels and they want to play with him. And he found his out. That was his out. And like I said, the relationship was fractured. They dragged that contract out, and then they didn't trade him to where he wanted to get traded to. As soon as he found a way to get out of there, he got out of it. He not even filing agreements to get the money back. He don't even want nothing else to do with him.
Yeah, to me, that's a major knock against judgment and professionalism with the way he handled it. That would be for me, but that's for Adam Peters to figure out, because there could be reasons there that he did behave that way. I think that is not a great look for him. It doesn't seem to bother you. With that said, in your first answer to the question, I don't disagree with you. If he passes a physical and our people, because they know the player and they know the player's team in which he came from, if they say this is absolutely worth it, I'm on board. But if he doesn't end up here, this team knows him better than anybody else. You know there was something wrong, that he's got a screw loose and they don't want him, anywhere near their team, more likely than not. And I'm just suggesting that could be part of the calculus here for him, that could be part of what people are looking into, and they should look into that. You seem to think that all he did was use this injury to get out of a contract that he signed and he committed to, top top 6 at the time salary for the position, and now he goes AWOL, acts as unprofessional as we've seen in recent memory in terms of a player that just signed a contract, was injured, and that should be ignored. I wouldn't ignore it. I'd look into it. Sounds like you wouldn't, but we both agree the player would be phenomenal if he's healthy. If you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to a few more of your calls. Brandon Ayuk, yes or no? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. All right, John Fanta is going to join us at 11, so I want to get through some of these calls. Brandon Ayuk, yes or no? Let's go to Little. Little, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, Coach. Thank you for taking my call. Shout out to Mad Max. I'm going to tell you one thing, Coach. If the 49ers cut this kid, it's a yes. And the kid don't worry about this money. You can see that money don't make a difference to him. He come in for about $20 million a year, of course.
Well, money makes a difference to him. He held out most of the summer of 2024 for the contract that he got.
I'm saying, of course, you bring him in here, and I'm just saying he wants to come here. So if they cut him, we already know he want to come here. And if he's willing to come in for $20 million, it's a big yes.
Yeah, I don't know what this would be. I think a highly incentivized deal. There'd be some guaranteed money because there'd be some competition for him. I think there would be. Again, there's a big unknown, and the unknown is what's wrong with this guy. Maybe nothing's wrong with him. Maybe it's the team's fault. But if there's something wrong with this guy, then you'll see the response be tepid, not zero, because there's always somebody in this league that thinks if I get a hold of him, all will be well. Thanks, Little. Appreciate it. Let's go to JYD. JYD, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, do you remember Dwayne Thomas?
Of course.
Same situation, a nutcase.
Yeah,
That's what you're looking at.
He was strange in Dallas and ended up here.
Right. And the same thing, and what did he wind up doing? He threw the running back coach Ron Waller against the blackboard.
Right.
Or whatever. Now, the basic thing is you're looking at is that why don't you just look at other receivers like Romeo Dobbs, who's going to be an unrestricted free agent?
Well, one reason would be you can look at him too, and you will look at him too, but Dobbs at his very best isn't anywhere near what Ayuk was in 2023.
That's very much true, Kevin. But you're looking at a guy now. I don't know because I wasn't there, but I did read one aspect was that he went to practice and they were unhappy with the practice with the type shorts that he was wearing.
That was a little bit of a confrontation between him and Kyle. By the way, if that's why he went AWOL, that's a major red flag.
Right, so there, and I think, and I've been knowing you listening to you on the radio for years, and I know that you're well read. If it's out there, you're well read up on most things that are out there.
Well, I don't know anything about this situation. Nobody seems to know the details of this one as to why he stopped showing up.
But you did read the same thing I read about the short thing.
Yes,
about his short.
Yeah.
There
was a bit of a Kyle told him that for practice, this is the general, gist of it. He showed up at practice apparently in garb that was not appropriate or not, team worn or wasn't supposed to be worn for the practice that he was there for. Kyle told him to go in and change. And some people think that was the beginning of the end of the relationship with Kyle. I would suggest that if that's true, that's a major red flag on Brandon Ayuk. That, there's an authority figure issue with him.
When you're talking about the kind of money that these guys make, Kevin, you don't need these, all this stuff about our quarterback's mother being a babysitter and this and this. And these are grown men.
Yeah, well, they don't always act that way, Little, as you know. Let me get to another caller or two. I appreciate it, but you'd love to have in your building people that don't need babysitters, but if they're truly talented and can make a difference in the win-loss column, sometimes what you do is you go find the babysitter and make sure he or she is a good one and pay them well and make sure that player behaves and performs for you on Sunday. Anthony, go ahead.
Real quick, I'm surprised that you buried the lead. LeBron and Steve Nash talking about the Wizards.
I'm gonna get to that. That's not the lead, but I'm gonna get to that.
Okay, just checking.
Don't produce my show. Max does that.
As far as Ayuk goes, I'd kick the tires for a bag of chips. If he balls out, no matter how well he plays, he would never get a big contract from me because I see Antonio Brown light. And that's not a good thing.
I wish you were as good as Antonio Brown.
No, I'm talking about the
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen that kind of behavior off the field. We just have seen a contract negotiation that I thought he got too public on, but that's subjective. But then clearly going AWOL on a team and then forfeiting and not apparently caring much about filing a grievance on nearly $25 million. If the people in his life for $25 million should have driven him to that building to get that knee checked for every single time he was supposed to do it per the contract. That's kind of, bad judgment. I got to run him up against a hard break, Anthony. Sorry, I always enjoy the conversation. Sorry, Ian, I missed you, Joe, Fred, everybody else on hold. John Fanta is going to join us next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Max, listen to this. This from Josh. Josh writes, that was interesting. Just so you know, the Wizards won against Indiana last night.
Did they?
Nice job, Kev. Peter Z writes, Kevin, not sure why Max didn't tell you, but the Wizards beat the Pacers last night.
No.
LOL. And then from Timothy, man, hello. Nice preparation, Sheehan. He opens the show thinking the Wizards lost Indiana. First of all, let me just make sure everybody understands this, because some of you, it sailed over your head. It was called tongue in cheek. I opened the show saying the Wizards won last night, but they'll have a chance to bounce back against the Pacers and redeem themselves tonight. That was tongue in cheek. Like, they're not supposed to win these games, guys. They're supposed to lose. So the bounce back was they'll bounce back and hopefully lose tonight against the Pacers. But here's what's shocking to me is that all of these people actually were paying attention to the Wizards last night. Good for you guys. Bless your hearts. I mean, bless your hearts. Still paying attention. I can't wait for next year. I'll give you that. You guys know I love this basketball team, and I can't wait for next year. There will be a seat at the big boy table when it comes to the conversation about Eastern Conference teams going into October, as long as Anthony Davis doesn't step on somebody's foot and get ruled out for 4 months. Do we have John? Is he ready to go?
We sure do.
One of my favorites, John Fanta. John has been a basketball lifer, certainly familiar with college basketball, the Big East in particular. John is one of my favorite things about John, who calls games virtually for everybody, and will be calling an NBA game coming up on Tuesday night. Minnesota at the Blazers. Minnesota in Portland to play the Trailblazers. That'll be an NBA on NBC debut for John. But one of my favorite things about John is if you ever watch John do an interview, these coaches love you. I don't know, like you don't need to self-promote here, but whenever I see you sit down with a coach, television, social media, it doesn't matter. Coaches, especially, I think Eastern coaches, Big East coaches, they really like you. You have a really strong relationship with a lot of coaches, don't you?
Well, Kevin, it's great to be with you again, and your interviewing skills. I'm not just saying this to you, but I always enjoy when you interview somebody because you don't hold back. You know, I think one of the things that I learned in this, and maybe you have a story on this yourself, but somebody said to me in college, you know, you got to remember coaches and players are people. Treat them as human beings, and hopefully they'll treat you back as that. In other words, I think coaches love a lot of coaches love the attention. They love the spotlight and all that. And there's so many different personalities. But if you get to know them as people as well, or as a person before what their daily life is as a coach, especially in this chaotic climate, you know, I think that kind of builds some trust, and they can be honest with you. And you're not, I'm not asking the gotcha. I'm asking sometimes what the elephant in the room is, and hope that they trust me enough that they can give me a half decent answer. So I appreciate you saying that with humility. That really means a lot. But I think I always say, you know, I remember the first time I ever sat down with Patrick Ewing, and, you know, we started talking about cooking, and we started talking about things that I never thought we'd get to. And it was almost like, get to know these guys in a different way than everybody wants to know them as. Like everybody knows what their defensive scheme is, but do you know what they're doing at 9 o'clock at night? We don't always. So it's just, that's kind of the approach I've always taken.
Well, you said something too, and I think that there are a lot of fans that sometimes view certain certain people who do interviews as gotcha interviewers. And I think that the trick is, and you've pulled it off now for a long period of time, is nobody that sits down with you views you as a gotcha interviewer, but they also know that you're going to ask the questions that you have to ask. And they respect you enough to know, hey, you know, it's the right question, it's a fair question, and I'm going to answer it. By the way, is there a coach that you enjoy sitting down with more than any other?
You know, Kevin, it's a great question. And I don't have a particular favorite. I'm really being honest when I say that. I would say, like I got to sit down with Tom Izzo earlier this week for NBC because I joined NBC in August and helped out with football and now jumping into basketball. And just, what I appreciate, Kevin? Izzo hasn't changed in the midst of all the changes.
Amazing.
And he pretty much tells you what he thinks, and his players know what they're going to get. Jeremy Fears, I said to Jeremy, because for those who don't know, Jeremy had a couple of flagrant fouls in recent weeks, and he was sort of in the news for being, people saying he's a hothead and stuff. I said, so how did this get handled with Coach Izzo? And he's like, Coach Izzo told me, don't let that become the story and enough. And a lot of players don't share that with you these days. They never want to say, they never want to take the accountability, but Tom is so honest. He's so truthful. Matt Painter's another guy that I just think he's very real when his team doesn't play well. Like the other night they lost to Michigan and he told us why. And I would say, I didn't cover Rick Pitino in his glory years. I didn't. And we also know that Rick Pitino has had ups and downs and has a past that could be multiple documentaries. But covering Rick more closely the last 2 or 3 years, what I can appreciate is he just doesn't give a you-know-what. And as a result, it's always enjoyable to talk with him because you never know what he's going to say.
Yeah. He's one that I can tell when you've had conversations with him. He enjoys you. Obviously when Kevin Willard was here for a few years, I watched all of the times that you've talked to him. By the way, he's doing a hell of a job at Villanova. We'll stick with college for a moment here, and then we'll talk about the NBA because you're going to start calling some NBA games. But, speaking of coaches, Mick Cronin the other night, Mick Cronin, for those of you who don't know, is the head coach at UCLA. There was a player in a game the other day that had a pretty, physical on a breakaway hit, but I didn't think it was egregious. I didn't think it was super flagrant. He literally ejected from the arena, from his bench, his own player, and then got into it as he often does with reporters. One reporter said, "What did you think of the Michigan State student section," or something like that. And he said, "That may be the dumbest question I've ever been asked," or something. He seems to be from afar losing it a little bit out at UCLA. What are you feeling as it relates to Mick Cronin, who I think's a good coach, but maybe is feeling it a little bit at UCLA right now?
I don't know if he's feeling it or he's trying to get out. I mean, he doesn't like the travel in the Big Ten. And he's not afraid to tell you that. He hates it. Let's just call it what it is. So because he despises it, and because, as you just said, he is a good coach, he took UCLA to a Final Four in his second year on the job. Because of those things, you have a very sharp contrast of success through career versus who he's being now, which is not nice. And he's only 54. But to throw your own kid out, and for those who don't know, this kid that plays for him, Jamerson, actually was a student at Michigan State, wanted to walk onto the basketball team,
right.
Didn't get a spot, didn't get a manager spot. So he might have been picked off. He might have taken some anger out and committed this flagrant now because he's now at UCLA. But Mick, Mick did embarrass him. I mean, I don't mind Cronin being hard on his players. I think coaches should still be allowed to press their players, especially guys that are making money. Jamerson's not. But the fact is, then you rip the student section, say you don't care, and look at a reporter and say, "Are you raising your voice at me?" And that's the dumbest question I've ever been asked. That's classless. I mean, there was no place for that. He should apologize to that reporter. I don't know what he's trying to do. What I do know is this: UCLA owes him $20 million. And the Jerome Tang news of last week of firing for cause, I'm here to tell you right now, Kevin, we are only starting the circus. You lived it last year with College Park. We're going to live it 5 or 6 or 7 more times in the next 5 weeks. There is a coach that no one expects to not be coaching their team next year or to not be elsewhere, that is going to be somewhere else next year, because this is the college coaching carousel, and especially basketball, because there's 360 plus programs, which increases movement. Football, same thing. Kansas State looks so silly trying to fire Tang for cause. I think UCLA, if they could, they would try to now because he's embarrassing the university. But the fact is, I think Mick wants out. I really do. But who's going to pay him $20 million like UCLA's offering?
Yeah, right.
He's hurting himself.
Yeah. So help calm down Maryland fans about Buzz Williams.
Yeah, I will say this. You can't have 2 years of this. You can't. You can have 1 year of this, and I know Maryland fans are frustrated. And guess what? They have every right to be. They shouldn't be 10-16. They shouldn't look this listless. Some of the answers about the wake-up time for these kids, I know that it might have been done before. It's not helping the situation. And this has been a disaster on wheels. Let's just call it what it is.
Is this square peg round hole? You know Maryland. You know the job. You know the fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Is Buzz just the wrong fit for Maryland, in your opinion?
Well, I'm not ready to say that. I would not be surprised if this gets turned around next year. I don't think it's square peg round hole. I really don't. I think it's going to be one of two things, Kevin. It's either going to be rectangle peg, where it's so extreme next year and it really falls out, or it's going to. I think that they could be a 20-win team next year, and everyone's going to be surprised at the turnaround. But Kevin, don't be surprised. This is a year-to-year thing in college basketball. I know you won't be, but I think the fans could be. At the end of the day, Buzz has taken a couple of square peg round hole jobs at Virginia Tech and Texas A&M and made those programs a winner. I can't ignore him taking Virginia Tech to a Sweet 16 and now say that he's just totally lost it. He took Texas A&M, he won 25, 21, then 23 games, and that came after he won 27 games the year prior to that. The guy had been churning out 20-plus win seasons. I understood why Maryland hired him. I know Maryland fans are frustrated. Take the Band-Aid off, rip it off hard, and go into next year. And I think that you'll see him recalibrate things. I think you'll see that staff recalibrate things, get a better Big Ten roster, and they'll be able to win.
I'll tell you what, what's becoming so clear, John, and you know this more than anybody else. X's and O's are important, but talent evaluation now, especially the portal, is so crucial. And, I think that's one of the underrated things about Kevin Willard. I think he's very good at talent evaluation and how these pieces fit together. The team he put together last year, the team he's put together this year at Villanova, I think he does that piece very well. What about Georgetown fans that are growing impatient with Ed Cooley? What would you say to them?
Well, I understand their frustration with a 5-10 team in conference play in a year where the league is down. And the performance the other night against Butler, I'm puzzled by, because you give UConn a hell of a game. They were in that game and had a chance to win. And then the other night against Butler, they didn't play much defense at all, and they get beat. And I think what Georgetown fans just want to see is consistency. They want to see an effort get put in, night out, that they can be proud of, whether they're always winning or not. It would just start with, you can't give up 93 points to Butler on your home court. And, they're KJ Lewis and Malik Mack are talented players. There's no question about that. But still, with the Hoyas, perimeter shooting is a question mark. They shot 6 for 22 from 3 the other night. You don't always know where you're going to get it from. And, Vince Iwuchukwu, that procedure that he had, the medical procedure, was a killer for them. Yeah. Obviously I give Vince a ton of credit for fighting through it, but they're not the same team without him. They haven't fully clicked again. And, there's going to be pressure going into year 4 for Ed Cooley. There's no question about it, because you're paid a lot of money to win games and get this program to the NCAA tournament. And I understand why a Georgetown fan would be frustrated or upset. What I would say is there's no reason, in my humble opinion, and I know it might sound like a broken record, but you just nailed it, Kevin. This is a year-to-year sport. And if you hit on 3 or 4 guys, there's no reason why you can't get to the NCAA tournament and have a window. And so they do have youth. Georgetown has guys that can return. Let's hope for their sake they can be selective with that. I think that they will be. They've got the funding to keep people and go and get more people. They've got to get tougher. There's moments where they show some toughness. they've got to get that edge back, and it has not arrived yet under Ed Cooley. I think a lot of people thought it would happen sooner. I would say keep the faith, but year 4, it's got to happen.
Talking to John Fanta. So I have to ask you and get your thoughts about, I think right now, one of the biggest stories in the sport, even though the sport is having a very good season. I mean, there have been great games. There have been great freshman performances, and it's going to be a hell of a tournament coming up next month. But what is your view of Darren Peterson right now and the number of games he's missed and the, at least what we know, the reasons for missing those games?
Well, I hate it. I hate it because of the unknown of this situation. Remember, I'm not saying that I despise Darren Peterson. All right, like I'm not going to sit here and say that. I hate the situation, and I can understand if NBA executives are now asking questions. They should be. They should be. You're hitting a 3. The ball is midair, and you're turning back to your bench to check out of the game. I don't care what anybody says. It's a bad look. It's a bad look. And whoever's advising this young man, because I don't blame the kid. His circle's not handling this correctly. He's not doing interviews with anyone. Kevin, people have asked. It would benefit the kid to do an interview because then he could lay out there. He could lay out there why things are happening. You don't have to do a follow-up if you don't want to. Nobody's saying you got to do 65 interviews, but Bill Self is out there defending you when I think we all know Bill would like to just let his guard down and say what he thinks. We all know what Bill's thinking. Bill's thinking, in my years of doing this, I've never dealt with anything like this. And I've dealt with some big-time players over the years. There's no shortage of them that we could go through in Kansas basketball history under Bill Self, whether it's T-Rob or Selden or whoever it might be. This is a tough situation all around, and I still think he's going to be the number 1 or number 2 pick. He's going to be, and people are going to say, Hemmon and Hahn saying, is it worth it? Is it? Look, the dude can play. He's got Kobe Bryant in him. I'm not criticizing his game, but the way that they're handling this situation is about as bad as you could think. Because here's the thing. If it were simply load management and he shut it down, it's fine. Like other players have done that. Do we like it? No, but at least we have clarity. The hardest thing with this is he's hurting his teammates. Hey, by doing this, you don't know game to game how long you're going to have him. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because I've heard the Kobe comparison before, and stylistically there's some similarities, but Kobe would have never, with flu-like symptoms, missed a game at Fog Allen against number 1 Arizona. Right. He was a killer. And that's the question. Do you have somebody who loves it enough and is killer enough? And that's, especially, John, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, in a year in which there are choices, there are other players that are, potential future superstars. He's not the only one.
100%. And the pre-draft process, like a lot of people are calling this over, that he's the number 1 pick. I'm not ready to do that. AJ DeBonta could go number 1. Also, we don't know who's picking number 1.
Right.
So we don't know positional need and how that's all going to work out. DeBonta can go number 1. Darius Acup's not going to go number 1, but the year that kid's having is absurd. Keaton Wadler, for those who haven't seen him, Kevin, this is what I'm so fascinated by tomorrow in Washington, D.C. For those who don't know, every time, without question, every time Cameron Boozer has had the spotlight on him, every time, I covered this kid in high school, every time people started to say, oh, he could get beat in this game, he wins. He finds a way to win. So the top of the draft class, that's what makes tomorrow's matchup with Michigan absolute theater in our nation's capital. This is a draft class that is flat out ridiculous. It's the best draft class of the last 25 years, in my humble opinion.
And that's why everybody's trying to get into it and get as high up into it as possible. So tell me, tomorrow, are we watching the best team in America in Michigan, or do you think it's somebody else?
We're watching the best team. If they play their best game, they're going to win the national championship. If they play their best game, they're going to win their first 4 games of the NCAA tournament by an average of 18 to 22 points.
Yeah.
That's how good they are. And here's what makes them so good. Their 2-point defense is ridiculous. It's either been 1 or 2 throughout the entire season. You can't score on them from 15 feet and in. So unless you're hitting threes, which Wisconsin did, Wisconsin got a combined 8 made threes from their front court in their win over Michigan. And look, Kevin, that's why we love college basketball. It's why we love the tournament. It's a one-game situation, and somebody can come out and just go nuclear. I'm going to get to that in a second about Cinderella. Let's not end this conversation before I bring that up to you because I have a take on that. But for Michigan, it's their bigs. Adai Mara and Morez Johnson are so imposing. Yaxel Lendeborg is this Swiss Army knife who you want to talk about crushing it in the portal. Dusty May crushed it with his evaluation of the player and the person. He does everything correctly. He averages 15 per game. He averages 8 rebounds. He's at well over 3 assists. His perimeter shot isn't great, but Yaxel Lendeborg is sort of the guy that holds it all together. And how about his ability? You watched Elliot Cadeau at Carolina.
Yeah.
Discipline was not a trait. It was not a trait. Discipline's become a trait of Elliott. So Michigan's the best team in America. Now, on the other side is Duke. And Duke, they have an absolute winner in Cameron Boozer. They've got a backcourt in Isaiah Evans and Caleb Foster that can get cooking quickly, and a backcourt that could have the advantage in this game. Duke's backcourt can play well enough that they find an advantage. The question is going to be, can Duke hang in on the glass? Can Duke hang in at the rim? Because against Michigan, that's always going to be the question. This is a very, very, very tall task for Patrick Ongba tomorrow evening and Malik Brown.
So I'll let you talk about sort of Cinderella, but what I was going to ask you is, after you answered yes to Michigan being the best team, and, you're right. I mean, their margin of victory over some good basketball teams has been insane this year, going back to November and December games. But two-part question. One, who poses the biggest threat to knocking them off? And two, who's a team off the radar, and maybe this feeds into Cinderella, that you like making a much deeper run than anybody understands right now?
Yeah, so the team that has the best shot of knocking a Michigan off could be the Florida Gators, the reigning national champions. And I don't think people would have expected me to answer that. And it's because of the fact that when you open up the AP top 25, Florida's listed as 12th. But they're playing significantly better than that as a team. Their front line is ridiculous, and that's why I like them against Michigan. Because Alex Condon, Thomas Houck, Ruben Chinyelu, they can stand there and hang in and battle and defend. And then it becomes a perimeter game. And Boogie Flan's good enough that if Florida just can get some perimeter shot making from their supplemental guys, they're a dangerous team. The other team would be, this won't shock you, Houston. Houston lost to Iowa State earlier this week. I still love them. I might love them more than I loved last year's Houston team, and they should have won the national championship. Yeah. Kingston Flemings is a top 5 pick in the draft. Sharp and Uzan compliment him, and JoJo Tugler and Chris Snack are in the front court. There's no drop-off to their team, and this is a better offensive team than Kelvin Sampson's ever had, in my humble opinion. They're a really good shot-making team, and they're 7th in defense. It's not as sharp of a defensive Houston team, but they're still dang good. So those would be the two candidates. You asked for a team that might be a little bit off the map that I think, has a chance. Well, it's a great question. But by chance, are you saying a team off the map that can make the Final Four, or a team that can win a couple games that nobody sees coming?
A deep Final Four run, maybe they don't, win the national championship, but somebody outside of a top 4 seed or projected top 4 seed that you really like.
Yeah, that's a great question, because the top of the country is so strong. But when I scan this and take a hard look at it across the table, and I'm opening up my 6s and my 7s right now, I'm going to go with Louisville or Wisconsin. Wisconsin has 2 guys averaging at least 18 points per game in Nick Boyd and John Blackwell. They fill it up at a very high level.
and they're one of only two high major duos, them and Toppin and Anderson of Texas Tech. I love that Texas Tech team, but Toppin's injury is brutal. It destroys their season. I really like Wisconsin's ability to when I see them beat Michigan on the road and I see them beat Illinois on the road. I sat courtside for that win over Illinois. I can't help but think this is translatable against the elite, because you could defend them well and they still make tough shots. It's a really efficient, strong shot-making offense that makes them a dangerous team. Louisville's had ups and downs, but for those who don't remember, they were a preseason top 10 team. And this is a squad that I think, if they get the right amount of production and we see Mikel Brown Jr. play to the level that he's capable of, Kevin, over the last 3 games, that guy's gone for 45 and 29 and another 29.
Wow.
So you pair him up with Ryan Conwell and Isaac McNeely. Why can't the Louisville Cardinals make a deep run in the tournament? And what that would be in college hoops with the Louisville brand back at the top.
Yeah, especially where it was a few years ago. All right, tell me about your NBA debut coming up next week.
I say this?
Yes.
I wanted to say this before the NBA debut. Cinderella's going to return to this tournament. And if you, I'm not a betting man, but if I were, if you want to have fun on the first Thursday and Friday, I'm guaranteeing you right now, there's going to be like a prop over under 1.5, 12s, 13s, or 14s to win a game. That over is going to hit. I do. I think your question about who could emerge was really interesting, because like I look at Nebraska and Vanderbilt, I don't like the direction each of them is going, and I think they're going to get picked off in the tournament. I know last year we didn't see Cinderella. She doesn't just die. And you brought up a great point, effort. Remember, now these kids on 4, 5, and 6 teams, they might 6-seeded teams, they might say no, but Kevin, they got people on the phone with them. They got emails, texts, and everything from other coaches. We don't know where their mental space is on the first Thursday or Friday of the NCAA tournament. I'm telling you right now, that matters, and we're going to see a couple of teams reemerge after a year where Cinderella was dormant. She is not staying dead.
We need some of that back. We need some of that early flavor in the tournament. All right, NBA wise, you're making your NBA play-by-play debut next week in Portland. So, I mean, why are you moving in this direction? And tell me about, what these next steps are. Are you going to become the big-time NBA voice?
Well, I really appreciate you asking about it, and I'm looking forward to it. It is the Timberwolves paying a visit to the Blazers on Tuesday night. It's 10 Eastern time. And I'll tell you what, I look at the basketball landscape. I never want to leave the college game. If I can merge the two and do games in both, I look at Robbie Hummel, who's certainly doing that. My colleague at NBC, Noah Eagle,
Robbie's great.
Does a tremendous job of that. Jay Billis is doing it at ESPN. For those who didn't see last year, he was calling NBA playoff games and NBA games. It's basketball. I love the sport. I'm a junkie. I watch it every day. I watch the NBA every day. I agree with you, by the way. The Wizards' future, there's a window and there's sunshine shining into it. And for future years, there's something that can happen for the Washington Wizards that is a good thing. But to answer your question, my bosses at NBC asked me to do this game, and I'm honored. I'm honored and I'm humbled to be a part of the NBA on NBC brand in any capacity, a brand that Bob Costas came on the air with, that Marv Albert was the voice of. That is a humbling thing to get asked to do in my first year working for them. So I can't wait. I'm excited. And my goal is, Kevin, call as much basketball as possible. I will never, if it's up to me, which NBC's, I'm not just saying this because I work for them. It's a great place to work. They're very honest and they're awesome to talk with. Like, I never want to just be, I'm ditching college. But if I can do both, I'd love to. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
All right. Tuesday night, Minnesota at Portland. John will be on the call for NBC. Anthony Edwards, Denny Avdia, who played here. He's had an unbelievable season this year in Portland. Enjoy it. I always enjoy talking with you. You're great. We'll do it again maybe before the tournament.
Can't wait, Kevin. You're always awesome to talk with. And for those that are heading to Capital One tomorrow, Michigan and Duke, enjoy the show. That's a great game in that building tomorrow evening. Can't wait to
watch.
watch.
It's the site of the Eastern Regionals. You know, the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight are going to be at Capital One. It's amazing how many times over the years Duke finds itself playing a game at a site that will be hosting either first weekend or second weekend games. They're good at that, and they get the experience. It should be a hell of a game. I'm with you, though. I like Michigan. Thanks, John, so much.
I do too. Thanks, Kevin. Have a great Friday.
John Fanta, everybody. John_Fanta on X. When we come back, LeBron James and Steve Nash on their podcast spent about a minute and a half talking about the Wizards' future. It was pretty positive. We'll play that for you when we return. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So the what do you got? I think yesterday was about Michaela Schifrin winning the women's slalom, and then just having an incredible press conference afterwards, talking about her late father and how she's dealt with as an Olympic athlete, having not medaled in a few Olympics. dealing with the grief, the sadness over her father, and it was remarkable. So I hear late in the Winter Olympics have paid attention a little bit. I did not see live, but I did see the highlights of the incredible U.S. women's hockey team winning gold in overtime. They were down 1-0, scored late, and then scored in overtime. But the What Do You Got is actually about the women's figure skating final last year. I guess final last night. They call it the free skate, where I guess the women's figure skating and the men's figure skating event, which, by the way, is always the highest rated on television portion of the Winter Olympics, or at least it used to be. It was not even close years ago. I mean, casual sports fans, not even sports fans, people love the figure skating, and some of the biggest superstars in Olympic history have been figure skaters. So last night, I was flipping around and I landed on the Olympics on NBC right around 10 o'clock, and they were doing a feature on Alyssa Liu. She's an American of Chinese descent. Father was essentially one that was persecuted after Tiananmen Square in the late 80s, fled China, ended up living in the United States in the Bay Area, and Alyssa is one of his kids. She's 20 years old. I didn't know much about her at all before last night, but this feature that NBC did in advance of her free skate, of her final skate, was so interesting. She was at 13 years old. At 13 years old, she won the Nationals as a 13-year-old in 2019, won the National Women's Figure Skating. She won it again the following year. And then she went to Beijing in 2022 as a 16-year-old, but finished 6th in the women's figure skating. And then the next year, she competed at the World Championships, finished 3rd. And then at 16 years old, Alyssa Liu retired from the sport. This is pretty amazing. You hear about, and this was not necessarily something that was described about Alyssa Liu last night. Alyssa Liu, by the way, ended up winning the gold medal last night. So just want you to hang in there for this story. So I maybe buried the lead there, but I was building up to it. But she retired at the age of 16 years old because she hated it. The grind for some of these super young individual sport athletes, especially Olympic sport athletes, where they are consumed. This is their life. And anybody that knows about skating or hockey, these are typically early morning starts. And as a 16-year-old, she hated it, was burnt out completely. 13-year-old, youngest champion ever, 3 years earlier, 3 years later, she's done. And she decided on her own, I guess with her family's support, that she wanted to hang out with friends. She wanted to go to concerts. She wanted to take vacations. She wanted to enroll in college eventually and did at UCLA. But they went on a family skiing trip about 2 years ago. And on that ski trip, she said, I felt the thrill of in the rush of competing, even though she wasn't a skier. She probably was a good skier. And she decided that I may go back to being a figure skater again. But apparently in that sport, if you've been out for a couple of years, and she had been out for a few years at that point, when she went on this family vacation trip and decided maybe I'll give it another shot. Apparently in that sport, you don't take a couple of years off and then come back and compete at a high level. It's not the way it's done. I mean, it is every single day, 24/7, 365 a year. You're consumed by this. You're working. You're an Olympic athlete trying to win a gold medal, and that's what this is about. And she didn't want it to be about that. And she talked two of her former coaches into saying, give it a shot with me, but it's going to be on my terms. I'm going to pick when I practice. I'm going to pick how my performance is and the music and the, the artistic part of it. I'm going to manage this, but I want you guys to be with me. And it's not going to be about winning the gold medal. It's going to be about going out there and feeling the happiness of skating and competing. And if the results are there, great, but it's not going to be about the results. So this feature about her, I thought was so interesting because you could tell that she was like ahead of her time. She was a bit of an old soul at 16 years old and understood, yeah, I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want the alarm to go off at 4:30 every morning and have to skate for 3 hours and then eat a certain way and exercise a certain way and be required. She retired at, who retires at 16? She came back, and I didn't see the buildup to last night. But apparently the discussion about her before she took the ice last night for her free skate is that how there's literally no nerves. She doesn't feel pressure. She doesn't feel the tension that so many of those girls and guys feel in these individual Olympic sports, and that she had skated incredibly well in the short program, I think it is, before the long program. And then last night, I mean, I don't know much about figure skating. I'll be the first to admit it, but it was a captivating performance by her. First of all, she's incredibly charismatic. Didn't know much about her. Watched the feature. I'm like, yeah, I'll watch her performance. Incredibly charismatic, incredibly athletic. And you could tell, like, she's just skating, man. She's just skating. She does not care how this turns out. And when it was over, it was the highest rated free skate performance, and she won the gold going away. And then afterwards, the interviews, I mean, she's got it going on. I mean, I know that these Olympic athletes end up becoming incredible for marketers. And this is where they end up making, gobs of money, because there's no, I mean, I know that there are guarantees and there's a circuit and you go on, and she's 20 years old. She'll probably compete in the next Winter Olympics, maybe, if she wants to at the age of 24. But man, like what I watched last night was a superstar, like somebody who's incredibly marketable. And the performance, again, not necessarily something I'm super familiar with. I mean, I do remember Katarina Witt from when I was a teenager and thinking that she was absolutely a 12 on a scale of 1 to 10, the East German skating star who became an absolute superstar during the 80s, early 90s. But this girl, Alyssa Liu, wow. What an absolute performance that was clutch, and just the way she carried herself before, during, and after. That is a marketable superstar if I've ever seen one. Maybe some of you are like, yeah, you're joining the party here a bit too late, dude. This has been coming for a while. But it didn't seem to be coming for a while. It wasn't like she was the favorite going into last night. One of the Japanese, or two of the Japanese girls, I think, were the favorites going into last night. Yeah, I enjoyed that. So I've watched a little bit more Olympics. And what do we got coming up in the who did the U.S. have? Slovakia in the semifinals?
The U.S. got Slovakia. Right now, Canada is playing Finland. As I last checked, it was 0-0, but that was at the end of the first period. But yeah, the Olympic hockey has been Finland's up 2-0. Wow.
Finland's up 2-0 on Canada. Was Canada a big favorite?
So Canada, they've been struggling as of late. The last couple games, they were down. It looked like they were going to lose to the Czechs a couple days ago. And then I left to get in the car. And then as soon as I got out of the car, I found out that Canada scored in the final 5 minutes to tie the game and then won in overtime. And then Team USA Women's did the exact same thing yesterday in the gold medal game against Canada, scoring in the final 2 minutes. Shout out Hillary Knight. And then, 4 minutes into overtime, popped the game winner.
Hillary Knight. Shout out to Hillary Knight. What about Megan Keller?
Yes.
She was the one that scored the game winner.
I was about to shout out Megan Keller. I wanted to make sure I got the name right because, I felt it would have been a little bit disrespectful. But yes.
So real quickly, is what are the odds on this in the Final Four? Who's the favorite?
Ooh, let me take a look.
Well, the U.S. has, correct me if I'm wrong, the U.S. has not won Olympic gold men's hockey since '80, since the Miracle on Ice. Is that correct?
That is correct. And Team USA is currently sitting at minus 130 right now. So they're the odds-on favorite.
They are the odds-on favorite. And I guess what was shocking about the women's final is that the U.S. had been so dominant for the last 10 days that being behind one, that was the only goal they gave up in the whole tournament, right?
Correct. Because they were boat racing teams like 5-0.
Yeah. So is that all that we got left in terms of the big events?
The fun ones. The ones that most people pay attention to. I feel like hockey and figure skating are kind of the two bigger ones. I'm a big luge guy myself. It's just something to watch.
You're a big luge guy?
Listen, man, it's really interesting watching them go down.
Actually, I kind of like watching the luge. I kind of like watching the bobsled. Herschel Walker, I think, was an Olympian bobsledder at some point, or was he an Olympian luger? I forget. One or the other. I'll tell you what. It looks beautiful, and that would be a spot to attend the Winter Games in Milan, and then to be in Cortina and those Alps just look spectacular. Looks beautiful. I've never been I want to go to a Winter Olympics. I've never been to the Summer Olympics. That's on the bucket list. I'd like to go to the Summer Olympics. I love the Summer Olympics. I love the track and field. I love the basketball. So I've always preferred the Summer Olympics, but these Winter Olympics seem to be gaining some steam here with just a few days left.
Yeah, got speed skating. I've been watching it every morning coming in here. There's always something live.
Who are the medal leaders? I don't even know.
Norway is currently kicking the crap out of everybody.
They are.
They had 15 golds last night.
Where's the U.S.?
Yesterday.
So the U.S. has to be up there, right?
Yeah, they were third. Okay, so here we go. Medal count right now. Norway's got 17 golds.
Let me guess.
Yeah,
I want to guess.
All right.
Norway is the leader. What about Finland? Are they up there?
They are not in the top 5.
They're not in the top 5. Sweden.
Damn. Top 7 is Sweden.
Top 7 is Sweden. Is the U.S. 2 or 3?
The U.S. is. Do you want me to give it to you? You
go ahead. Just give it to me.
All right. Norway 1, U.S. 2, Italy 3, Germany 4, France 5.
Okay.
France has 20 medals. The U.S. has 27.
So the only Nordic country in the top 5 is Finland, but I would imagine Norway, but I would imagine the others are on the list somewhere.
Finland shockingly far down at 22 with only 5 medals.
Okay. Who knew? Not me, obviously. All right. I promise that we're going to play what LeBron James and Steve Nash said about the Wizards. You'll hear that next. G from the shop. Herschel Walker was a gold medal Olympian, dumbass. And a bunch of laughing emojis. Actually, G, you're the dumbass. He was not an Olympian gold medal winner. What I said was Herschel Walker competed in the Olympics either in bobsled or the luge. I was correct. He was a bobsledder. And what did he finish, Max?
He finished 7th in the two-man bobsled event, missing the podium by a narrow margin out of 46 teams.
Yes. So 7th, I don't think is gold medal.
Close.
Yeah. Jesus. What year? Hold on. What year was that?
It was 92.
The 92 Winter Olympics. Where 88 was Calgary. 92. That may have been the year they had it was weird. They went to off years with the Summer Olympics. I think that's right around where that started. I don't know. Where were the 92 Winter Olympics?
In Albertville, France.
Oh, France. Albertville, yes. France. Got it. So LeBron James and Steve Nash have a podcast called The Mind Game, or Mind the Game, excuse me, Mind the Game. Yesterday or 2 days ago in their last, podcast together, they started to talk about the Wizards. You'll hear LeBron first and Steve Nash second.
But I'm interested to see, what they do and how it all comes together, with AD, obviously, we know the talent level is out of this world. Yeah. And, Trey, with his ability to play pick and roll game, his ability to shoot the ball, his lob threat. I love the young kid from France that they have on their team, too. We just played him. Sar, we just played him 2 weeks ago. Great touch, great feel for the game. Love the kid, George, as well. Yeah. Young kid, pretty good player. And then also the rookie kid that they got from Texas, Trey Johnson. I think, it's going to be tough. Every year they have some pieces. And I think for the first time in a few years, we can say that Washington has grabbed some pieces. Right? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
I mean, on paper, Washington's interesting because, if you look at, Trey's weakness would be defensive impact. But you have AD and you have Sar, as your 4 and 5, 5 and 4, however you want to slice it. Sar can stretch the floor. Yeah. AD obviously can roll and duck in and do all those things. They got some support, and they got some wing size and length and defenders too. So there's more support for him there. And you know how brilliant he can be offensively. So it is interesting to see if they keep that thing together.
I think it's interesting to see it. I'm very interested to see how it come together for sure.
This isn't the first time since the AD trade, the Anthony Davis trade, that we've heard from people covering the NBA or players. There's going to be a seat at the big boy table, the adult table for the Wizards in the conversation about NBA Eastern Conference contenders before next season begins. Get ready for it, because we're going from a tank, 3-year tank, 3-year total rebuild process, however you want to define it, to next, late September, early October, being a part of the conversation of teams that are sneaky good in the East. That's what the Wizards are going to be. Now, of course, it comes down to, will Anthony Davis get an ouchie and be out for 3 months? He's going to have to play 60, 65 plus games. But there are a lot of people that love this sport and love this league that see Trae Young and Anthony Davis together as a really, really intriguing fit. And if you've watched enough of them, you can see it. Trae Young hasn't played with somebody like Anthony Davis. We talked to Will Dawkins on the show last week when he was on with us about that, and he said Trae Young's never had anybody like Anthony Davis to play with. And then the idea of an Anthony Davis, Alex Sarr sort of rim protection tandem is pretty impressive. And then you've got shooters. Trey Johnson can really space the floor. Trae Young can really space the floor. Alex Sarr, as a 4, might be able to space the floor. And then you got Keyshawn George and Will Riley, and Coulibaly is a great defender. The idea of Coulibaly and Davis and Sarr on the floor at the same time defensively. Sure, Trae Young can't guard me, but it won't matter with that kind of rim protection. Again, this is a wish because Anthony Davis just hasn't been able to stay healthy in his career for long enough. And of course, The missing piece that we don't know anything about, at this point, is what will the Wizards get in the 2026 draft? What if it is an immediate sort of Cooper Flag-esque contributor from picking number 1, number 2, or even number 3 in this draft because it's loaded? Yeah, get ready for it. I mean, this team's been irrelevant. It's been barely an NBA franchise for a few years now, really for about 47 years. But I have said from the beginning, and I think a lot of you agree, this was the way to do it. And doing it this way may not exist anymore if Adam Silver gets it right and figures out how to, I don't think it's an easy task to minimize the tanking that's been happening. There are some ideas floating around out there from the commissioner. We'll get into those before the end of the show, hopefully. But I'm not saying the Wizards are the favorite next year in the East or even the second or third or fourth favorite. But they're definitely a team that if you just look at it on paper and you say, Anthony Davis plays 65 games next year, they can win 45 plus and be very much in that mix of 4 seed, 5 seed, 6 seed, not playing. Ben Standig next. Ben is with us as he is every Friday. Ben Standig at Ben Standig on X on Twitter. Substack, subscribe to it. It hardly costs anything, and it's totally worth it, especially now. In terms of people covering the team, Ben does it as well as anybody does it. He joins us right now. What are you tweeting about with respect to Marshawn Lattimore? What's the story? Am I missing something about Lattimore?
No, that is literally the tweet. Some rando who I don't even know who it is, but some quote unquote reporter tweeted yesterday that Lattimore is going to be released. Not source. It's like saying the tweet is the equivalent of the saying the sky is blue, but it had like crazy amounts of retweets and interactions, and I'm just like, what? I'm just generally asking the audience, what the hell is going on here? He's literally not even saying it source nothing, and yet everybody's acting like this is Santa Claus just showed up. Like I don't understand. Yes, I understand that that Twitter is stupid. I get that part, but
yeah, I mean, this is why engaging in it is just such an absolute time suck and a waste of everybody's time. That like that is something like you could go into another NFL team's sort of just hashtag another NFL team's obvious cut and say, get ready for it. Such and such is going to get released here over the next 3 weeks. Because it sounds like that's what, of course we all know Marshawn Lattimore is getting released. Like that, that's not news, and it's not a new conjecture or new, thought.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't know how you do it.
The person who wrote it clearly is attempting to write it in such a way that gets people to engage. Okay. That sucks, but okay. But the audience should be, I don't know, somewhat discerning. But I also think, and just to go to a broader point about the state of the media, this is why the losing media members is problematic. There are only so many people who can be even discussing this topic. I mean, obviously you and the radio, but like, in terms of like the quote unquote reporting, there's only a handful of people. So the fewer there are, the louder the dummies like this, their voice amplifies because there's a big gap out there. I mean, again, this person is not even attempting to claim anything. It's just that people see this because, I don't know.
I've told you this before. That social media world is really a fraction of everybody that is paying attention. And most of the people that aren't involved in those interactions are actually the smarter group. So you're good. You don't have to worry about this person.
Well, I
wouldn't sweat it.
I hear you, but at the same point, like I put out, like, not to promote what I'm doing here, but like I put out 2 things this week. I surveyed players at the end of the year about different things. I put out 2 stories, and one about who's the best athlete on the team, which was interesting.
Talk to you about that.
And one about sort of the locker room setup. How did it go? What do we think? I would like virality for that. I would like hundreds of people to do that. And like, that's actual something. I'm not saying I'm getting a Pulitzer. I'm just saying it's actual work that somebody did that gets no attention essentially. But this stating the sky is blue in terms of the Commanders, somehow people would just turn off their brain and say, well, this must be a thing.
You know that what we're talking about right now, 9 out of 10 people listening couldn't care less. What they actually care about is the work that you did surveying players on the team. First of all, just tell me the setup for this survey and how many questions are there in this survey? We've gotten the first one about who the best athlete is, and we'll get to the answers because I actually saw you tweet this out and decided that I would try to guess it on my own before I read it. I was not close. Although I just saw the voting, and one of the players I guessed was in the voting. But give me the setup to this.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously at the end of the year, there was only so much you could keep asking about the games and where did it all go wrong and all that stuff. So I was like, all right, let me try to find other ways to just, to engage with these guys. So I just, went around over the last couple of weeks and just asked them. It was ultimately 6 questions. The first 2 were, I posted something on my site, Last Man Standing. But yeah, I just, it was a way to engage with them and try to have not be the doom and gloom of where would it all go wrong. There is a question about how do you fix this thing going forward, but by and large, this is about just trying to get a little feel for who these guys are, what goes on inside that locker room, what do they think about different topics. There's one about involving the stadium that's coming up. There's one about Pro Bowl. If only one person could have gotten in, who would it be? Not about the Tress Way aspect of who actually got in, but if they could just pick one person. And it was an attempt to that, and it was actually pretty good because these guys were willing to engage, and I think in part because it wasn't about how come you guys have had such a loud.
What were the 6 questions?
So who's the best athlete on the team? what do you make of the new locker room? And now that you've lived it in terms of both, it was an open space before versus the aisles. Who's the one player that you would vote to go to the Pro Bowl? What are your plans for the off season? What do you do to fix 2026? And hold on, I'm blanking on the other one. I'll give it to you once I keep talking.
But you've posted the results of the athlete question at this point.
The athlete and the locker room one. The locker room one's up there
right.
also. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the athlete question before we reveal who the best athlete by way of your survey of players on the team was. Did you have a guess as to who it would be before you started asking?
Yeah, I would have gotten it right. I wrote about when Tyler Owens, which is the answer, was when he came in as an undrafted free agent. He started to make some plays. That first, whether it was mini camp or training camp, and you're just like, what's going on here? And then I looked him up, and you see that he completely dominated the combine.
Right.
From an athlete standpoint. And then you go back a little bit further. He's just doing these crazy metrics and numbers and all that. In his college career and so on. So, I mean, look, you never quite know. And part of my thinking on this was that, these are all guys, relatively speaking to athletes in the country, right? These guys are all in the top, 1% or something like that. These are the best of the best. This is why they go out there and do it. They also, there's different body types. You got the 300-pound linemen. You got the 180-pound receivers and everybody in between. So, like a guy like Colson Yankoff, who was on the list.
Right.
Like Colson Yankoff, people are going to be like, oh, okay, whatever. At UCLA, he played quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, goes to the pros. Now he's playing tight end. The ability to do all these things is insane. And that was reflected by some people mentioning him as an athlete. Then that was also like, there was no definition. It was open floor to whatever they thought best athlete meant. So, I kind of assumed it would be Tyler Owens in my head, but it was a close vote, and you never know.
So there were two people that came to mind for me. First was Jaden Daniels, and he did get some votes, right?
Laramie Tunsil voted for him, yeah.
Laramie Tunsil finished second in the voting, so there was that. But then I thought of the fact that they've drafted some really good athletes, that relative athletic score, that RAS score in the draft, and Kane Medrano came to mind. He didn't get a vote, did he?
He did not. I mean,
because he was one of the highest RAS score guys, I think. I've got to go back and look that up, actually. But I thought that his RAS score was one of the highest in the draft last year and one of the highest ever for a linebacker, if I remember, because I know I talked about it on the show.
He was the fastest at the combine among linebackers, which is why I was, I had mocked him here because they needed speed on defense, and it was somewhat of a dart throw. But yeah, no, he's definitely good. I mean, there are lots of guys like Jordan McGee.
He had a 9.83 RAS score. That was the 57th best out of 3,204 linebackers measured from 87 through 2025. So he was nearly, he was in the top, basically the top 2% of linebackers from the last, 38 years of this. I didn't even know RAS scores were kept back in 87. But he didn't get a vote. Jaden Daniels did, and I thought about Jaden Daniels initially, but Medrano didn't. So Tunsil was number 2 on this list. By the way, you have a player tied for third that I'm unfamiliar with. TJ Morin Yangana. Did they sign him off the street late in the year?
No, he was the international pathway player that he ended up playing in one game for them this year. He was promoted from the practice squad and played in the game. And I mean, he was a professional rugby player. And
Got it.
Yeah. So
I remember reading about him. Yeah.
I think it was Sam Cosme picked him. He's like, well, I mean, the guy is essentially a pro in 2 different sports. That's impressive. And then just watching him what he does. I mean, the reason why the team just ultimately showed interest in him in the first place, right? It wasn't because he could be good at rugby, because his athletic traits were impressive enough for them to say, let's see what we can do here. So, yeah, he did get some votes.
So Tyler Owens was voted first place best athlete on the team by the players on the team in Ben's survey. Tunsil was second. Do you have any ideas? I'm guessing Tunsil's a really good basketball player.
Oh, I don't know.
Do you have any idea?
I don't know. I've been told that the best basketball player on the team is apparently Brandon Coleman. He was originally trying to be.
Yeah.
He grew up in Germany, more or less, and he was trying to be a basketball player. And then at some point he moved back to the States and veered into football. But supposedly he's the best one, not just a lineman, but just on the team.
Wasn't Josh Connerly a really good athlete too, coming out? And maybe he was a basketball player, or I could be thinking about somebody else. So Tunsil was second. The international guy, Ben Sinnott, Colson Yankoff tied for third, and then others receiving votes: Jacob Martin, Sandra Still, Tress Way. Is Tress a really good golfer? Maybe.
Tress has got his hand-eye coordination is stupid. Like, again, playing ping pong or cornhole or golf may not be the definition of athlete, but he crushes everybody in all of these things. So, yes.
Burks, Jaden, Noah I, Quan Martin, Terry, and Jeremy Reeves all received votes as well. All right. It's kind of fun. I always think about the best athletes on the team, and the players are always the ones that really know, because there's so much that goes into the way people think about the best athletes. Like Jordan McGee also was somebody that came into mind, and he didn't even get, a vote in your survey. But he may just be Oh, are we back, Max?
We are back.
What did we have going on? Everybody safe?
Yeah,
Everybody
everyone's
okay?
safe. Everyone's alive. With just some connection issues. I don't know really what happened. You're about to ask Ben a question, and then it just mysteriously cut out. So
is Ben still there?
Ben is still here. What's going on, Ben?
I was just listening to my theme song. It was nice. I appreciate that.
Had to give
We
you
do
a
have
proper,
that as your. I don't know why I guess it's still standing, as in still standing.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Elton John, 1987, maybe.
Definitely not my favorite Elton John song, but I get the point.
Not me. Yeah.
No.
All right. So what I was saying, and I don't know how many people caught this and if they're going to catch it for the third time, but Jordan McGee can run pretty fast. Seems like a pretty good athlete. Didn't get one vote.
Yeah. Well, so, this actually kind of ties in to the other question that I published about, like I said, the change of the locker room. Before used to be this one big open space, a big rectangle, and they needed to be upgraded. Yeah, it's much better from an amenity standpoint, but now it has aisles, so now you can't see from one end of the room to the other, and it's actually an interesting dynamic because it shifts how the flow of the communication and the camaraderie of the room goes. So my point is, on this question or any of these questions, like the best athlete, some guys immediately had a thought. Maybe it's somebody was in their position group, or they just have a thought. But others would let me think about this, and they would sit that wherever they were, look around the room. But again, you can't see the whole room. So perhaps a guy like Kane Medrano or Jordan McGee, if they had said, "Oh, I see that guy right, he's sitting across the room, yeah, that guy," but instead they were just having to kind of go off their head because I was asking this. They didn't know the question was coming. So it kind of ties in both ways. I'm sure almost everybody on the roster in some way, shape, or form probably could qualify, depending on how you wanted to assess it. But like I said, if you're just kind of winging it or just thinking top of mind, who are the better, a couple guys, some guys that stood out.
Well, let's just talk about Tyler Owens for a moment, because they liked him enough as an athlete and as a special teamer and as an occasional player to sign him to a 3-year deal. It wasn't a big money deal, certainly. It was a rookie deal, but still, this guy's under contract. He's not making much money. I think about him. I think about Medrano. I think about some of the players on defense that haven't had as many opportunities that may all of a sudden be attractive to a new defensive coordinator like Durante Jones and the kind of defense he'll play. I'm wondering if you have a feel for, at this point, the guys that we didn't see enough of, or maybe we did see enough of, but didn't necessarily perform, that maybe will, make out differently with a new defensive scheme.
Yeah, for sure. And look, you mentioned that RAS score. I believe, you can double check that, I believe Washington's last two draft classes were the highest rated.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, that's, so when we've been talking about, hey, they've got to get younger, they've got to get more athletic, they got to get faster. Well, they have clearly leaned into some of that over these last two drafts. Now, of course, this is where, it doesn't always apply. I had one prominent front office leader from another team tell me that over the years when I've made mistakes, it's typically been towards the athlete. Now, obviously, in the case of Tyler Owens, it's an undrafted free agent, a good find. I think he played a little bit more last year. I think in his case, and maybe a little bit with Jordan McGee as well, it's how do you harness the athleticism, combine it more with the mental game, like understanding the plays that are happening in front of you, where you need to be, and all that kind of stuff. Ben Sinnott was another guy that was on. You're talking about defense, sorry, but Ben Sinnott was another guy that was on this, guy that got some votes, and he was one of those guys who kind of wanted to vote for himself, because his definition was he played 6 sports at varsity in his last year of high school, which is again a definition of that. But in terms of the defense, Mikey Sanders still got up there. I think we still don't quite understand what his best fit is. Slaughter outside. McGee, we saw his speed really stood out because the defense was not particularly fast. But, is he ready to play, the Mike linebacker? If that's the way it shakes out, if Wagner doesn't come back. Can he call the plays? Can he keep the speed while having to think more, right, about what he has to do to get everybody kind of set up? I think that is something to keep an eye on. And, you mentioned before, we're talking about the international pathway guy. I mean, look, it's hard to – the fact that he even was active for a game was more than we had seen from the others who were in that spot. David Botta comes to mind. There's something there. Actually, I'll have a story out at some point because I talked to him and one of the coaches about who this guy is. And, like I said, they were just kind of blown away by the athleticism. Does that mean he's ready to play? I think there's some hope there, but again, what are we talking about? It's one thing to even make the 53. It's another thing to be productive. And that's the thing. They've got to turn some of this athleticism on both sides of the ball into actual production. And that's where it's kind of been, stuck so far, stagnant so far.
So I was talking to Keim yesterday, and he brought up a player just that could be interesting in free agency to Washington because of Durante Jones. Eric Wilson played at Minnesota this year, actually played very well as, an inside linebacker. He's, a veteran player, 31, 32 years old. If they move on from Bobby Wagner, a veteran like Eric Wilson, who's not only, high IQ, but a good player and a great teammate. And I thought about, who'd Quinn bring in, Bobby Wagner? Who'd Ron Rivera bring in? Thomas Davis. I mean, Davis was older, but, having, in a for a defensive head coach, and we had back-to-back defensive head coaches, they brought in players that were familiar with the systems. And I know Joe Witt Jr. was coaching it, but it was Dan Quinn's system. Do you think there's a possibility that there's a free agent on Minnesota's roster that ends up being an early target for Washington and free agent like an Eric Wilson? I mean, Harrison Smith seemed to be ready to retire at the end of this year after a long career in Minnesota. And maybe the Vikings are going to move on from him. But I thought that the Eric Wilson, and he is an unrestricted free agent, was a real interesting name that he brought up.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you do when they bring in somebody from the outside, you're like, okay, well, let's look at that roster and see who might come. The Vikings don't have a particularly robust free agent class, at least in terms of from the outside perspective. Like, they may have people that they need to keep, but not necessarily you're like, ooh, that's a guy. But, you would think that a couple of guys will probably come over, but and maybe Wilson is sort of the top of the food chain in that regard, a guy that did, start basically all season. Obviously, if it is sort of staying with the Flores system, would have some familiarity with that, of course. And the Bobby Wagner aspect of it, like, my thought all along was, depending on who they hire to replace Joe Witt, could go a long way towards whether Wagner is back, because Wagner, beyond the fact that he's going to be a Hall of Famer, all these things, clearly a Dan Quinn guy, a Ken Norton Jr., the linebacker coach guy, and that's why it made sense to bring him in again on top of being, an all-timer. So why wouldn't the logic still apply for Durante Jones? Now, right when the Durante Jones announcement happened, I brought on a guy that covers the Vikings, Matthew Toller, who's also on Substack, and we had a live chat. And I asked about Harrison Smith, and he just kind of gave me a look like, he's either going to retire or he's not going to leave. Like he's a
he's a Viking.
I'm not saying he's Darryl Green, but he's kind of that for that organization. So
sure,
that would seem pretty unlikely for him to go. One thing was, but one reason I kind of asked about Smith was, in that conversation, it was the notion that the safeties play a big role in what Flores was looking to do. The ability to go, up and back line of scrimmage and back and play a lot of different spots. And if you're blitzing and that safeties play a big role, which is why I was wondering about Harrison Smith, and it's also why I wonder about Caleb Downs in the draft. Again, if in fact he does place a little bit more emphasis on safety, maybe that is something to keep an eye on, both in terms of free agency or the draft. But I don't think there was anybody else obvious to me on the Vikings where you're like, oh, that's a guy. Like when they brought in Dorrance Armstrong, there were like 5 or 6 guys on Dallas' defense that I could have said that would make sense. I don't know that I see the same for the Vikings.
All right, we're going to finish up doing this. I'm going to just ask you, back or somewhere else in terms of their own free agents. And I'll start with Chris Paul. Back or somewhere else?
This is an understanding, of course. I'm just mostly having the educated guess here, right? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Chris Paul.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm not going to hold you to it because you might change. I mean, we're going to do this again. But right now is the time to do it because we're now going to get busy here, I think, for the next couple of weeks.
I just don't want somebody putting it on Twitter and it goes viral because they're just stating something.
You worry way too much about Twitter. You got to stop. Seriously. It just is not that important.
Chris Paul, I'm going to say no. I do think they would want him back. I just wonder, does the market for a guy who basically was a starter this year at a position that offensive line is hard to find, college kids are just not coming out with the, with the skills. And I just can see somebody maybe going, hey, we'll give you some good money in Washington, thinking, well, we have Brandon Coleman. We've already invested a lot on the line, and we just have other needs. So I'll say no, but I do think they would like him back.
All right, back or not, Chris Paul? No. Back or not, Marcus Mariota?
I would have said 99% no prior to Cliff Kingsbury finding a job. The fact that Kingsbury got a job where he's not the play caller, it's not his offense or nothing, I'm going to drop it to like 65 no, because Mariota.
So it's still no.
Still a no, because Mariota is still, one of the. This is not a great QB free agent class, and like if Kyler Murray gets released by Arizona, then maybe that pushes the odds down for a guy like Mariota. But if Kyler Murray doesn't get free agency, then Mariota becomes a guy that people might want either as the stopgap or a fill-in or what have you. So I'll still say no. But again, he would like them. He likes it here. They like him, but I think he'll want to play.
Back or no? Back or not? Yes or no on Dietrich Wise?
I'll say no again, just based on the age and the
injury.
The injury, and again, is he what they're looking for in this new system? If it is more of like a 3-4 base, again, they'll move guys around and may not look like that. But you already then have, if Payne is staying, Kinlaw, Newton, like they're gonna have to bring in edge guys. Like maybe if they're just using more of a 3-4 look, then that guy Wise would be the guy who kind of be the odd man out. So I'm gonna guess no.
Back or not, Deebo Samuel?
I will say no. I just, again, and I've talked about this a bunch. He, to me, the way he played, and look, he had a really great training camp, a hot start to the season. Deebo did what he could do. The offense fell apart around him, but he's just not a traditional outside receiver. We saw that when Terry got hurt. He couldn't fill in that role, and he's just more of a luxury type of player. This team needs staples, so to me, they should be spending money on receiver as more of a traditional outside guy who can make plays down the field. So I'll say no on Deebo, but we'll see what the marketplace looks like.
All right, two more, and then that's it. Bobby Wagner.
Well, I mean, we just sort of had the Eric Wilson conversation. I would kind of like to say yes, because I think Wagner's ability to blitz, as he showed last year, along with the tackling, might actually be a better fit for what we think Durante Jones could do. But I don't know. At Wagner's point in his career, does he want to go? Look, he put in 2 good years here. Does he want to go through what looks like a rebuildy kind of year? And is Jones want him? So again, I'll kind of say no, but it wouldn't. I could easily see him back if they decide, hey, let's just keep him. We know what this is, and we can figure out other ways to help the defense elsewhere.
All right. The last one is I think everybody's assuming no, but I'm curious if you think there's a chance at yes for Zach Ertz.
Well, I'm going to say no in terms of him being back here. Whether he plays or not, that's a little harder to say. But, he was one of those guys that came here because Cliff Kingsbury was the OC, and they had their connection from their time in Arizona. That obviously is not a factor. Now, granted, he was here with David Blau the last couple of years, and not to mention Dan Quinn. But, in the notion of getting younger and all that, I just think you got to move on. And also, he got hurt in week 14. So I don't know what this means for his recovery. They have to figure out more at tight end, whether they go with Sinnott more or not. So I'll say no on Zach Ertz.
All right.
I think I
Thanks.
said
Have
no
a
to
good
everybody.
weekend. Give yourself a break from social media this weekend. That's my advice for the upcoming weekend for you. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Ben Standing, everybody. When we come back, the WCAC boys and girls tournament is this weekend. Paul VI is ranked very high nationally. Their head coach, Glenn Farello, may have just coached the best player to ever play in our area. He'll join me when we return. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. This weekend at American University, one of the best local events of the year, the WCAC, both boys and girls tournament. The quarterfinals are tomorrow all day, with the boys playing at 1, 2:45, 4:30, and 6:15. Number one, Paul VI, who finished undefeated in the WCAC this year and is the number one team in the country per Max Preps right now, will play McNamara, the 8th seed. And then semifinal day is Sunday at AU with the boys starting at 4:30. Finishing up with the second semifinal game at 6:15. Always fun to witness the best basketball conference, high school wise, not just in our area, but really top to bottom in the country. Joining us right now is the head coach of Paul VI, Glenn Farello. He's been there, as many of you know, now since 2007, has accumulated one of the most incredible records we've seen in the history of high school basketball in this town. And I don't know, I mean, you've had some unbelievable teams. Is this your best team?
You know, Kevin, first of all, it's great to join you and then talk some
great to have you.
And, and WCAC basketball. And then for tomorrow, just to make sure all your listeners know, the quarterfinal games are held at Gallaudet.
At Gallaudet,
for the
my
boys.
fault, yeah.
Yep. No, it's all good. And the girls are at Gonzaga, and then everyone's together on Sunday and Monday over at AU.
Sunday and Monday at AU.
Yeah. So as far as our team goes, I mean, it'd be unfair to say that how this team ranks with all the other great teams that we've had in the past. Certainly ranks up there, and of course their story's not finished, and they have some work to do to get to the level that some of the other teams have in the past. But certainly, I love this group, and I'm really proud of the work they put in and the way they've represented our school and all of the former players and teams. Like, you know, they have a lot to live up to, and the legacy and the history of what we do, and they take it seriously. And then they of course get a little pressure from the alums, if you will.
Do you keep track as to how many players you'll likely have be playing in March Madness in the NCAA tournament?
Oh, man, in March Madness, the guys are going to actually be there. A lot of work to be done there too, but we got a lot of coaches and former coaches and former players.
I mean, it's double digits players that'll be playing in it, right?
Well, we have 12 guys right now that are playing college basketball, and we have about 8 former assistant coaches that are now either head coaches or assistant coaches at the Division I level. So it's a lot of fun. Just got done talking to Brandon Chambers, one of our former assistants who's now an assistant at NC State. And of course, they had a big win against UNC the other day. So it's always fun to hear from our former players and coaches.
All right, we got to talk about Jordan Smith, who you've had here for a few years now. I saw him when he was super young at AU this weekend 3 or 4 years ago. He recently committed to the University of Arkansas to play for John Calipari down in Fayetteville. Some people have said over the last few months that Jordan Smith may go down as the best high school basketball player that's ever played in this area. And we've had, as you know, some good ones, Elgin Baylor, Kevin Durant, Danny Ferry. The list is long. Tell me about Jordan Smith. And by the way, do you have any kind of perspective on where he'll go down in terms of high school basketball players from this area?
So I'm obviously very proud of the career that he has put together, and of course doing it all here at PVI for his 4 years and the way he's kind of handled himself. So I think he certainly is in the conversation. A lot of respect for the names you just mentioned. Adrian Dantley is another one that was mentioned to me the other day, and of course a lot of the powerhouse teams that the Coach Wooten had over at DeMatt. It's really what a great thing for Jordan to even be mentioned and be part of that conversation. He's currently in his career 61-1 in WCAC play, either regular season or postseason. It really has been an incredible journey for him. And he was injured; he didn't get a chance to play as a freshman in the WCAC playoffs. But obviously, the last 2 years we've been able to get the championships, and he was a big part of both of those. And then obviously in the senior year, he would love to finish that way. So if we can get through this weekend and finish it off, I think the conversation is legit that he can be mentioned in that way, because not just for his performance on the court, but also the achievement with his teams and winning it, which is what Jordan cares about ultimately.
I know it's hard because you've had so many of them. It's like picking a favorite kid. So I'm not going to ask you to do that, but tell everybody what Jordan Smith what his game is and who he plays like and what they can expect when they watch him at Arkansas next year, or if they're coming out to AU this weekend. I mean, he is in the 2027, all of the mock drafts, he's a projected top 3 or 4 pick in the NBA draft 2 years from now. Tell everybody the kind of player he is and who he plays like.
Yeah, so he first off, his motor is absolutely just tremendous on both ends of the floor. His athleticism, he's only 6'2", so to be able to do this at just 6'2" is truly remarkable, I think. And even as he gets projected out, there's not too many players that are playing in the NBA that are 6'2" or below. So I think he just has a special. He checks off all the boxes. I mean, he truly, his basketball IQ, his feel for the game, his ability to play make, shot make, the defensive end. He's considered the best defensive player in the country. He just impacts the game in so many ways, and he's so competitive. He cares about the right things. He cares about his teammates. So he lifts everybody up. And I think that's one thing that great players do is they find a way, not just with their games, but also with their attitude. He finds a way just to lift everyone up. So everyone around him, identifies as a winner, and he has that type of impact. And I think it's great that he's gotten that kind of recognition across the board. And for me, for all my former players, he has like all the elements, all the best things of a Trevor Keels or an Anthony Harris or a Jeremy Roach, Brandon Slater, recently a Darren Harris. There's just so many players that have come before him that he just really kind of encompasses all of them in a way. And I told him and his family when he was a freshman that he would be the best player that we've ever had at PVI. And even back to my career at Roosevelt when we had Delonte West or Eddie Baz and Delonte Holland. So like I just felt like I could say that to a freshman because I knew he was humble enough to take it as a challenge, and I was also confident enough to go for it and take on that challenge. And he's so humble. He is so driven. His parents have done an amazing job of raising him the right way and putting him in a position to be successful. So a lot of times you take a chance telling a freshman how good they could be because they may end up acting entitled. Never had to worry about that with Jordan, and of course he is certainly delivered on all of what I said.
One of the things that you mentioned is so obvious when you watch him is just the relentless competitive motor that he has, along with the athleticism, of course. And you've coached forever. And I mean, before PVI at Eleanor Roosevelt, one of the true iconic PG County public schools all time, you've been around young people forever. Do you think that motor, that relentless motor, can be taught, or is it innate?
To that degree in which he is, it is innate. Victor Oladipo, you asked me to compare someone.
Oladipo, that was on my list.
Yeah, no, I felt like he's the first kid I've seen since Victor Oladipo that just could impact the game just by his presence and how it is his relentless competitiveness, like the way I think you described it perfectly. And I do think that is not something that you can, draw out of someone to that level. I think you give someone, from level 4 to level 5, but he's at level 10 and he's, so I think I sometimes challenge him, right? Aaron Thompson was a great defensive player for us and went on to Butler as a 4-year starter and is now an assistant at GW. And I've always told Jordan, I said, well, Aaron Thompson's the best defender we've ever had here. And you had to close out. So the other day we were watching the film and he made a mistake. He doesn't make too many mistakes. And I just turned to him and said, hey man, Aaron Thompson would not have made that mistake. And he takes it in stride. Like he takes that as a challenge. Like he's gonna remember that now. And so I think that competitiveness, I think his will to want to get better and then to constantly improve, I think it's a lot of fun to watch. But no, that motor is a special thing. And when you then then you put that together with the basketball IQ and the feel for it and the skill set that he has offensively, it really comes together and it makes him the player that he is.
Yeah, I had Oladipo written down just because Oladipo at DeMatha had it, and then he had it at Indiana. Gary Williams says it's the biggest recruiting mistake he ever made, not offering Oladipo right from day one, because he said he was such a perfect fit for me with the way he competed. The other thing about guys like Jordan Smith is there's no doubt, right, in your mind that he'll be ready as a freshman to perform at a high level. Like he'll go in with that level of confidence and belief at Arkansas and the SEC.
I agree. I think the thing that I said earlier too, I think he's got the perfect combination of confidence and humility. Confidence that he can do it. Nothing phases him. He's ready for the big picture, the biggest moments, the biggest stage. He performs great in the biggest stage, going to Team USA, winning a gold medal on the under-19 team. He just has that ability to do that. He also has the humility to know that he has to work for it and that he's part of something bigger than just himself. And he doesn't have a personal agenda. You ask him why he plays defense the way he does, because his dad taught him when he was young, defense wins championships, and he's in the business of winning championships. So I do think he can be very impactful next year. No matter what his stat line becomes, it's his presence on the court. He's going to impact winning, and I think that's Coach Cal got certainly a good one coming to him in Arkansas.
We're talking to longtime Paul VI coach Glenn Farello. The WCAC boys and girls tournament this weekend. The semis on Sunday at AU. The finals will be on Monday. It is a great event. You are seeing literally the best talent in this area, and I think top to bottom, the best conference basketball-wise in the country. And I say that often, and I'm less familiar, obviously, with the overall national landscape like you are, and you play a national schedule certainly in late November and through the month of December before you get into league play. Is there any league, and I'm not talking about the basketball factory powerhouses, but is there an actual league in any major city that rivals what the WCAC is year in and year out, sort of top to bottom?
No, and with all respect, and again, the academies have their own model, like you said. But from a league standpoint, I think you think of the Philly Catholic League, the New York Catholic League, Baltimore Catholic League, Chicago, LA area. There are some other leagues that are absolutely outstanding, but from top to bottom, I don't think anyone measures up to what we've been able to produce all these years, year in, year out. It truly has been an honor to be part of this WCAC and the landscape that we have. But the coaches are outstanding. The players, the talent, top to bottom, is very competitive, and So I think we've stayed there. We've been saying that for years, and I think we've lived up to it. And I think this year's another year. I think we've seen five of our teams in our conference be ranked in the top 25 in the country at times. So we certainly feel that way. We feel good about who we are as a conference, and we're really happy that we get to represent the DMV, because the amount of talent is just in the DMV alone. And it's not just the talent; it's like it's the mentality, the families, right. The parents. They all play. They all understand. It truly is. These kids are born with a basketball in their hands, and they're taught how to play the game the right way. And so I think we see a lot of that, just outstanding coaching and playing all the way through. And it allows us to be able to compete on the national level where we're able to kind of go out and all branch out and have those opportunities.
Do I have this right, Coach, that you've won 60 straight in the WCAC?
No, we actually dropped one last year at Gonzaga. So we're 55 and
Sorry,
1.
Somebody just texted me and said he hasn't lost a conference game in 4 years.
Last year, no, it's okay. We had a 47-game winning streak snap last year. We're now in the last 4 years. Yeah, the last 4 years we are 55 and 1 in the regular season, and
you lost to Gonzaga last year.
Yeah, last year at their place, we lost by 3. Unfortunately, we were able to turn that back around and beat them in the championship game.
I was really impressed with Derek Dixon in that Duke Carolina game a couple of weeks ago. He played so well down the stretch, the freshman guard from Gonzaga in that game. Well, listen, best of luck. It's so much fun to follow it, and what a player you've had. Good luck this weekend. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for being honest. Thanks for the shout out to our conference and giving some coverage and some shining some light on it. We're very excited to go into a great weekend of basketball.
Well, look, you're fast becoming, a guy that we're going to talk about in the same way that we talk about Morgan after, all these years. You have built up an incredible resume and done something at PVI that I don't think anybody saw coming back in 2007. Thanks, Coach. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
All right. That's it for the show. Nick Ashew's in for Chris Russell. He's next. Be back with you guys on Monday.